I just want to welcome everyone to our Silence the Shames community conversation. I want to thank those who are coming into the room and who are streaming live on Facebook as we get into this very important conversation as we are all kind of getting adjusted, going back to school. I know some of the northern states have also started going back, as well as our southern states have been in for a couple of weeks now and really adjusting, but we also have this emerging Delta variant, right? I think we were kind of done, right? We thought we were like, yay, vaccinations, masking, cases going down, and whoop, there we go. So now we're facing a new layer of anxiety. So I am welcome to bring all of our panelists on today to really jump into that conversation. And let me just start off by saying, again, my name is Jewell Gooding, and I am the executive director for Silence the Shame. So we are here to really promote and educate communities about mental health and wellness, and really putting in that conversational piece to continue to prevent those gaps in health services and healthcare, and making sure that we can really talk about mental health in an authentic way so that we are better equipped to access the support that we need. So I am so excited to bring this panel to you all today. And we're going to just start off with our moderator, and I'm going to allow her to introduce herself in just a few. And if you guys know, there are just some opportunities at the end of this that you all can have some questions and answers on your own, right? So if you want to have comments, please feel free to utilize that chat function. If you have questions throughout, you can pop them in there and we will get to those as well too. We can do it throughout, or we'll do it at the end. There's an opportunity to have some interaction here. So with that, like I said, if you have any other thoughts, make sure you pop it in the chat. And I want to hand it off to Dr. Nikki Evans-Jones.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gooding. Yes, I am Nicole Evans-Jones, and I'm honored to be your moderator today. I'll say a little bit about myself and my background, and I'll hand it off to each of these amazing panelists that we've gathered here today. I am a career educator. I am in my 28th year in public education, specifically all 28 years in Title I schools. So those are the schools with more higher need and less economically strong families and students. So I'm very proud of the work that I've been able to accomplish. I've been everything from a principal, assistant principal, instructional coach, and counselor, and now I do engagement work, which I love at a local school, and I help to engage parents, teachers, students, and the community, because we all know that education needs not only those tax dollars, but nonprofit and corporate dollars to really make significant gains with students. So that is a little bit about me. I'm sure I'll chit chat throughout this conversation, but I would like to hand it off, and I'll just look at my screen and go with the next person that I see, if that's okay, who is Miss St. Joy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa St. Joy. I am currently an assistant principal in an elementary school in Atlanta. This is actually my 19th year in education. I started teaching in Los Angeles Unified School District before coming to Georgia. I also taught in DeKalb as well before coming to the metro area. I've been everything from a teacher to an instructional coach to an educational consultant in the Southeast region of the United States. And now I'm here in Atlanta working with little humans, I call them. And I have had experience in Title I and non-Title I schools as well.
Thank you, Ms. St. Joy. Mr. Alford.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Alford. I'm a parent. My wife and I, we have a blended family. There are 10 total children. 6 are adults, with 2 of them being in college. So we consider them as adults now, even though they're still on our dime. But we have 4 children who are in kindergarten through 6th grade. And so, you know, this whole COVID experience has been interesting. I'm also the president of EDhear. We're an education-centric strategy and communications company. And we work with school districts around the country, helping them with crisis communications and so forth. And so it's given me an interesting perspective on, an inside view of how students are dealing with this and how school leaders are dealing with it. Prior to starting EDhear, I worked for Atlanta schools for nearly 20 years. I was a teacher. I worked in their IT department, and before leaving, I ran their communications office. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Alford. Ms. Gooding, again.
Absolutely. Again, I am the executive director for Silence to Shame, but I'm also a national certified counselor and have 20 years experience just working in mental health with clinical services, advocacy, policy development. So long world in that world. But I'm also a person with mental illness, and I am a parent of 3 boys and married for over 18 years. So we're kind of fighting this out together as well. And 2 of my boys have mental illness as well. So we have great fun in this household as well. So I'm happy to be here as well too, and just to give some insight on what's going on to hopefully support families throughout.
Thank you, Ms. Gooding. Ms. Maxwell, last but not least.
My name is Tieyenna Maxwell, and I am a middle school English teacher. This is my 7th school year. I've done 5 in Title I. I did a half a year in China and came back home because of the pandemic. And I actually went to a very, very affluent school and community afterwards, which I did a 1.5 years at. Like Dr. I almost said your name wrong, Jones. I wanted to say Jones Evans, but like Dr. Jones said, I think Title I, it's a blessing. And sometimes you don't really know how much of a blessing it is until you experience the other side. So coming back into it, I'm very proud to be back with our students. I'm also a mother. I'm a mother of, I call him my bonus son. He's 10, a 4-year-old, and I'm currently almost 37 weeks pregnant. So I'm very, very excited to be here and to give my insight on how the pandemic has impacted our students, especially our students, our minority students. So thank you so much.
Thank you all once again for being here. You live such busy lives. Just listening to your introductions, it is an honor to have you all here together this evening. I'm going to jump right into our questions because we don't have a lot of time. I know everyone has a wealth of knowledge to share, so let's get right to it. First question, research has shown that the pandemic caused disruptions in routines and social isolation for children associated with anxiety and depression and implications for mental distress later in life. Also, research has shown that as economic conditions worsen, children's mental health is negatively impacted. For example, parents with young children reported in October and November 2020 that their children showed elevated depression, anxiety, and psychological stress symptoms. And 22% experienced overall worsened mental and emotional health. Can each of you describe your experiences with children, work, or staying healthy for the last 18 months? Let's start with Ms. St. Joy.
Sure. That's a very loaded question as far as experience with all those things, because I would say, the first 2 months of 2020 were going fantastic. We were rocking and rolling in school. That was my 4th year at that particular school. We were in our rhythm, and the world came to an abrupt stop. And when that stop happened, you're kind of like, are they serious? Is this what? And then you're watching the news at like, what's really going on? And as a lot of us have said, we worked in a Title I school. So I'm in my school where it's abruptly stopped. My kids don't have technology at home, but we're saying everybody's supposed to learn online. My kids, they eat at school, so they're not coming to school, so they're not eating. We got to figure out that part. And that's part of your brain that's processing that. And the other part of your brain is processing, but I went to school to teach, not to feed and provide technology, but that doesn't mean that I can't figure out a way to do that, to kind of create the best of this, but what is this? And trying to make it normal. And then also acknowledging that even though we're trying to provide these things for kids, am I okay? And I'm actually not. I think at that time I was walking around with a spray bottle of bleaching door handles and, because we just didn't know. And it was, how do I make this as normal as possible, even though this is not a normal situation, and acknowledging that I have to, when it first happened as an administrator, like my immediate thought is, are my kids okay? Are my teachers okay? And I didn't have the space to show the transparency that I'm panicking too, because I had to be the strong one for them, and say, oh, it's going to be fine. Oh, we're going to work it out. And as soon as I get off the meeting, I'm like, what are we going to do? This is not okay. And trying to balance all of that. And, it was different levels of it, because it was first the world shut down, and then they're kind of like, well, you're going to go back a little bit. And you're like, well, what does that look like? And that initially looked like just me going back to the building and my principal. Then it was like, oh, we're going to welcome the kids in. How does that look like? Because there are no vaccines. Like, what are we doing? So acknowledging all those spaces, acknowledging when I'm not okay. And for me, not being okay, I reconnected with my therapist. I was like, I need to talk this out in a safe space. Simply because, again, I felt like I could not have the transparency to panic in front of the children or the teachers or their parents. So I need a place where I can panic and go crazy. And, my therapist would be like, she gave me that space. So that was very important to reconnect, so that I was okay to be able to be the stronger person. I wouldn't say strong, but the stronger person to help and reassure and think through things and be able to calm little and big humans through this process.
I love that. What do they say when they used to say when you were traveling on an airplane, in the case of loss, pressure, put the mask on yourself and then help others. So I love that. Does anyone else have anything to add about how it affected your children, your work, or you?
Interesting. It actually brought our family closer together, because we were all at home at the same time. And that was great, I guess, for a few months. And, we had a daughter who was a senior in high school. And so the first year that COVID happened, when it first happened, she didn't have a prom. And then the next year, there was a question about whether there would be a prom, because we didn't know if we would have school at all. And so, she was a little bummed out about that. And that's an understatement. And then my daughter, who's in college, I had to drive up to Washington to pick her up. And she was really bummed out. And to the point where she actually went back to DC and learned in a dorm room virtually, just to have, some type of connection with her school. And it took a while for her to convince me, that was a good idea, or to let her do it. I never thought it was a good idea, but we did that. And so as the year progressed, I could see, their experience or lack of experience in school and with their friends taking a toll on them. And then when you factor in, after about 12 months, people started to adjust. And so their friends may go out. It's like, well, my friend's parents, they're going on vacation, or some schools would open back up, or they may have some type of program. And, you have different, value constructs across different households. And I was like, well, in our house, let's do a pros and cons, is it really worth that? And so, yeah, it took a toll on them after a while.
Yeah, no, but I love that. I do think it brought a lot of families closer together, a lot of clarity and transparency in families and relationships. But then it also allowed you to look at your values and really, really think about what is important to you and your family, how you laid that foundation with your kids, and then have those conversations about, well, things might look this way there, but this is how we in what we
Absolutely.
believe, how we live and what we believe. Anyone else? Ms. Gooding?
Yeah, I'd have to concur in all of those dynamics. You know, I ran a nonprofit, so I had to be the strong one, and so I couldn't panic either, right? And I also had to be the parent, and I had to, you know, also be the child too, because I also have elderly parents, and that was a huge debacle, right? Trying to get them to kind of follow the right price because I'm grown, you can't tell me what to do. I'm like, I know, but I still want you to stay healthy and safe. And so lots of different dynamics. I think one of the biggest concerns I had with my children, of course, is just learning and their ability to adapt to the different changes. The online part wasn't so big for me because they play video games 24/7. So it's like, you know, there's some adaptation. It's just how much are they actually comprehending from a virtual learning set versus, you know, sitting and blowing guns everywhere, you know. So that was one of my biggest concerns. My youngest son has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So trying to keep him in sustained attention and focus, and he does better in structured, you know, environments, and it's hard to stay structured in a virtual learning system. And then of course, just my own mental health. There was just, you know, for me at first, I have to agree, it was great, you know, kind of being together, connecting. You feel like you can really, you know, learn each other. I've learned so many different things and watched my kids grow. But there was a point where it's like, okay, I can go back now and what we can do differently. So lots of anxiety, I know, across the board. Even depression with isolation and not being able to connect with others. You would do it virtually, but it was hard. You just sometimes you just want to hug, right? You just want to connect with people and be able to touch people again. And it was hard for them because they miss their friends, right? And to Stephen's point, you know, sometimes it was like, yeah, I know they're doing it, but doesn't mean we got to do it. So that was a constant conversation of trying to keep teenagers at bay and keep a 12-year-old, you know, invested in life, you know, to just do something more than play video games all day. So yeah, I know, Tieyenna, you just being pregnant, I cannot even imagine. So please share your experiences.
Well,
Yeah.
when the pandemic initially hit, I was actually in China. I had gone in August of 2019, and I remember taking my son to Disney. And the day after we left Disney, seeing people in masks and wondering why are they in masks. And the women that I had traveled with, they were like, "Did you hear about that virus that's going around?" And it was kind of, you know, like a rumor, but it wasn't a lot of fact to it yet. And there's a lot of censorship that happens in China. So it was a lot of what is real, what is not real. And we had to return. It was like, get back on campus. You know, if you're not going to be traveling long term, you need to be back. And when we returned to the campus, we had about a week before they officially would not let us leave out of our apartment doors. And my husband was here and I was there with our son. So it went from freedom, traveling, it was during the Chinese New Year, everything was good. I didn't plan on being home until the summer, to now I have a 2-year-old at the time and I can't leave the house and he can't leave the house and we're stuck. And I didn't know how to manage. So I would say when the pandemic first started, I had a load of fear because I was there with my son. I remembered him when he got really sick about a month into our trip there. So I wondered, as a foreigner, will I take priority? What if we get sick? Are we going to die here? What's going to happen? So I made the decision when they started closing down the borders. I was like, I am getting out. I don't care if I have to spend all the money in our bank account. I'm getting back home immediately. So I got home on February 2nd because what made me finally make that decision was they sent us a message and they put letters on our door saying we were stuck in our apartments until March 30th. And I had no more groceries. So they brought me cabbage, tomatoes, and onions. And I said, I'm supposed to feed a 2-year-old cabbage, tomatoes, and onions until March 30th. Are you crazy? So it was just, I was like, I have to go home. I need to be home. So when I got back home, I had to quarantine. And then I started working at a very affluent school. And they were preparing because the cases had started increasing in America. So when I got back, I remember initially being like, okay, life is back to normal. You know, the world is open. I'm not quarantining. We can play, we can go out. And then I got home and the world started closing on this side too. So then here's my son who is very outgoing and who had been isolated in the house and then quarantined in the house. And now he's back to the same thing he was experiencing in China. The difference is he has both parents. And then I go back to work and I was there for 1 week before students could not come. So I'm watching these students who I barely know, who I'm just starting to learn, start shutting down or disappear. You know, some of them just did not come back. Once they went virtual, they didn't return. And then when we started the last school year, a lot of those kids still never returned. I had students who never showed up the entire year until quarter 4 because they were so mentally bombarded and stressed out and dealing with mental health issues. So throughout the year, what I realized is we can see the other side. We can see like, oh, it's going to get better one day, or oh, eventually it's going to be this, or oh, if we do this, then this is going to happen. But when you take a bunch of children and teenagers, they don't see the other side. So for a lot of them, we had more suicide attempts at our school. And I was working at a very affluent school then. We had a lot of suicide attempts. We had a lot of kids experimenting with drugs. We had a lot of kids whose parents were reaching out like, what do you do? How do I help them? They like you. How do I get them to talk to me? You know, what's going to go on? What's going to happen? Or why are they getting all this work? Why are they still being asked to go to school when all this stuff is going on? So it was hard to find that balance of saying, yes, your kid needs to learn, but also how do I get your kid to care about learning when, you know, they want to kill themselves? You know, how do I do that? So it was very hard, but it took a lot of patience. It took some therapy. It took a lot of moments with friends where I just had to vent and say, listen, this is too much and I don't know what to do. And eventually it took me having to take myself out of the equation as far as the school that I was in. I didn't leave early, but I made it through the year. And I said, you know, I didn't feel that my value with that set of students was the same because I was the only minority teacher in the building. So I was like, I need to go back to the kids who, you know, understand me and who I understand a little better and who I felt that I can represent a little bit better. So it was a lot, but I think overall I've learned that we have to be patient and open and understanding with each other and not brush off the feelings of children because they have the same, you know, brains that are processing. And a lot of times, you know, psychologically, they can't control or understand their feelings. So if you just brush it off as, oh, they're being dramatic. No, they're 12 and they don't understand how to deal with, you know, that anger or that anxiety. So, yeah.
I love it. I think Miss St. Joy said it well when she said they're little humans, right? So they really are people with their own feelings and ideas about things. And you have to think too, this is the worst thing that they have dealt with. And that's everything, right? Not getting at the right lunch table or getting invited to the right party. That's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. They don't see the other side, to your point. But I'm glad you shared the way that you did because you're actually the boots on the ground person on the panel. You are the teacher in the classroom. How have you managed the anxiety surrounding COVID-19? You touched on that a little bit, but with this new Delta variant, because I know even for me, that's changed things a little bit. I want to know how it's changed it for you and others.
So for me, it actually put me back at home. So after I found out I was pregnant, I requested to go back home because my school that I was at, it's in a smaller city. So a lot of people are anti-COVID. It's not real. They just, you know, it's the government trying to control us and my kid isn't going to wear a mask. And we had a lot of COVID cases after Christmas break. And I was like, you know, respectfully, either I need to be at home or I need to be unemployed because I am now carrying a little human and I have another little human at home. So I went home. I taught virtually throughout the rest of the year. I came in on Fridays and I would work with students, do small groups, things like that, where I was in a smaller setting. And then now I'm back in the building because I switched into the district. So I'm back in the classroom, full classroom. Every day I'm telling students, put your mask up, put your mask up. And a lot of them also don't think COVID is a serious thing. Some of them have had it. I had students telling other students, oh, I had it before. It's not that serious. You know, I just felt a little bit sick. And I've had to tell students, your body and their body is different. You can get COVID and die. they can get COVID and not feel it. Why do you think that this is that serious? So with me being a few weeks out of giving birth, it's very scary. And I was very nervous to go back in the building because I know, again, a lot of them can't process the seriousness of it, especially since there have been less deaths among children than there have adults. Right. So a lot of them don't understand the importance of why they need to be, honestly suffocated throughout the day and muzzled and muted. Because a lot of times I'm like, I can't hear you. Can you say it louder? And they pull their mask forward. Some of them pull it down. They have to take mask breaks. Like, it's hard. I'm like, it's hard on me. And I know it's hard on them because I was wearing them in China. So I had a little bit of training before coming over here with keeping a mask on my face for longer. So it's been hard to, kind of be like the put it on, pull it over your nose, because I know that they're suffering. But at the same time, I have to also be responsible and say, this is the way that we're going to protect each other. And with my immune system being compromised, carrying a little person, I need you all to respect that and to, stay 6 feet. And some of them want to hug me. They want to touch my hands. They want to, especially since I'm pregnant, they are so helpful. They want to be like my little helpers, and they barely know me. And they're so touchy feely. But it's like, I still have to say, COVID, we got to keep some distance. I'm also human. So I'm like, I have a sink, I have hand sanitizer, I have wipes. One of them today, he was doing this little finger thing with me. He was trying to show me something. And I was like, I'm a germaphobe, but you know what? Let's do it. We'll do it. And I'll go wash my hands. So it's been a blended experience. So it's like, I have to be the responsible factor, but I also have to be compassionate and understand that, these little humans don't understand this. And even though people are dying, especially within minority communities, a lot of us are just starting to take this very seriously. And I think this variant showing that the numbers are going back up and we haven't reached the end. I think it's now a lot of people are starting to click like, oh, this is real. And people are starting to lose family members. So,
yeah. Anyone else on the panel want to add to that? The whole Delta variant, has that changed anything for you? How has that affected your work or your kids?
It certainly changed it for our household and even for me professionally. The original COVID didn't really impact children. And it appears that, people are not actively engaged. They're still, moving around and making decisions based on, COVID-19, not the Delta variant. The Delta variant is impacting children. More children have died from the Delta variant than the flu. And I heard Sanjay Gupta on CNN just this morning talking about it, how, everybody's still thinking that, well, you got to be older, not in shape or have some type of condition, which is not the case. And what's interesting is that last year, we shut the schools down, and we didn't really open them back up right away, even after the data came in about how children were not as impacted by it. But now if you look at the data, and children are getting sick, children are dying, certainly not, in the numbers where the adults were dying last year, but, enough for me to be very concerned as a parent. Yeah. And, one of the things that concerns me is, looking at how, as a community, meaning parents and schools, how we're dealing with it. And I don't want to get ahead of myself to get to the political question, but, it's a mess sometimes, depending on how someone feels about, their right to do something. Or, one thing that we've heard from some of the schools is, well, my child will come home and say, their friend is quarantined for a week. And I'm like, well, I didn't hear anything from the school. And they're like, well, you have to be, right next to them or direct contact. And to me, that just seems like, something from 2020, I mean, with the Delta variant, I understand that it's 75% more contagious. And so if you have a group of kids, my youngest son is a kindergartner, he's not hearing it. He's going to have fun. He's going to see his new friends, and they're going to touch and they're going to play with things. And so, and there's only so much a teacher can do with a room full of 20 children, who are 5 years old. And so it has certainly gotten our attention, and it's just, it's terrible. I mean, I'll just leave it there before, I don't want to get into the next question.
No, you're right. And I want to just get Ms. Gooding's opinion on this, because my next question, just kind of piggybacking on what you said about how it's affecting children, I want to send to Ms. St. Joy and see what administrators are actually doing. But before I get to that, Ms. Gooding, anything you want to add to that about the conversations that you've had or feelings around the Delta variant?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, and to Stephen's point, you're exactly right, that we still pretend like it's the same way and it's impacting our community the same way. The challenge, of course, is that now there's this COVID fatigue, right? And whether it's the COVID-19, COVID-21, COVID variant, like folks are just tired of talking about it. And the challenge, of course, is what we have as far as our leadership and the ways that they're handling things. A lot of challenges with the back and forth in regards to the science of it, right? Because, the CDC says one thing and then, 2 days later, the CDC said something else. So, it doesn't take much, right, to dissuade folks to say, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, well, technically none of us do. We're all trying to figure it out, right? We're learning along the process. The virus knows what it's doing, right? And we keep trying to fight something that it's really not even a fight, right? The virus is still going to continue the way that it's going to variate. We all know in regards to science that it does happen. That's why we have different flu streams, right? That it does occur. I think the restrictions of it all has put so much challenge, and to kind of tie into that political piece of it is that unfortunately it has become political, and we have removed the essence of just being compassionate and helping others in an unhealthy situation. My biggest concern, honestly, is the hospital capacity and how many other people who aren't able to get the immediate access to emergency services because our hospitals are filled with individuals with COVID symptoms instead. So, and then of course, looking at our students who, to your point, are just developing, right? Their brains can't process this. Their brains aren't developed till they're at least 25. And right now we're going through a collective trauma. So the amount of development that's changing in their brains is astronomical. And we have no idea until a couple of years later what's going to really happen, right? Yeah, I mean, there's just no true way to understand, the running joke I hear is COVID babies. I'm sorry, Tieyenna, but that they look different, right? They're more aggressive, but it's interesting to see how their brains are going to develop from all of this and how they're able to understand some of those losses, not being able to go to prom, not having a graduation, not being able to hang out over the summer with your friends, and it's the last time before you go to a new phase in your life. Those things are challenging, going from 8th grade to the 9th grade and having to learn in the 10th grade, not really knowing who your teachers were, right? Not being able to build those relationships. And even long-term, we even think about college admission, right? How are you going to have those relationships with teachers when you don't even know them outside of a mask and video screens, right? So I think a lot of that is taking a toll on our mental development, understanding screen times and how much we do have this virtual learning and interacting and engagement. And I mean, naturally, you still have concerns about long-term impact of vaccination. So, I mean, that's a very real fear for parents. So there is that, I don't want to, and I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the idea is that there is nothing guaranteed, but we do with what we can with the best available data that we have now. And things that we have learned, or at least to support, is yes, social distancing, masking, vaccinations. Those things have been helpful to mitigate some of those symptoms and some of the variants that we're now faced with, and helping more people to get aligned with understanding, yes, no, we don't really know what's in the vaccine, but we really don't know what's in a lot of stuff that we take and we deal with every day. I promise you, we have no idea what's in McDonald's meat, but we still eat it every single day. So I think it's important to help people get aligned with that. But I think it's the fighting of, I just want my rights, because you hear this a lot, right? We feel like our rights are being taken, and parents feel like they are being boxed out because teachers are frustrated, and we don't even remember to remember that teachers are human, right? And they have their own families and they have their own challenges, which is why this is so important to say, we're all different faces, but we're all dealing with some of the same challenges, no matter what role we play or how we're investing. And we're all just really trying to keep ourselves healthy and safe. And sometimes it means doing that for the next person. So just looking at what that looks like and how children are interpreting all of this and not really understanding, I am concerned. I'm concerned. Like right now, my student came home and told me they staged a walkout because of the dress code, because students want to show their stomach. This is what they're upset about right now. They want to be able to show their stomachs because they were able to do that when they're at home. They had their pajamas on and their blankets, and now they have to come to school and they're told you got to put on clothes, and they're like, what? We like the virtual learning. I don't want to put clothes on anymore. And they're fighting against this. So just, can you imagine what students are feeling, that this is what they need to fight for? Is I want to be able to wear a tube top. Oh, okay, but that's their biggest issue right now, and we can't dismiss that either, because they feel like that's the only thing they can control, right? And they themselves are also fighting for the loss of control. They're fighting that they don't have any control over everything that's happening right now. And that's hurtful for the parents who can't really support them, for administrators who are just trying to teach them, for themselves and their peers. And they're just like, we just need to fight about something, because we have all this anxiety and anger and frustration, and we just got to let it out. And this is how they're doing it. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and that's super important that we think that through, like you just did. And so my question to Ms. St. Joy is, how are you addressing, the needs of students and teachers, quite honestly, bus drivers, bus drivers, they have 60 kids, maskless sometimes on the bus. Do you feel that you're getting supported, or you're getting the support that you need to then support your teachers and your students?
So yeah, a couple of things on that. We definitely have, I guess it's defining what support looks like. So yes, we've received PPE, we've given our teachers cleaning supplies, like we got the basics covered. I think it's acknowledging too, for the big humans and the little humans, people have been in different phases of COVID. Either A, they have completely isolated themselves this whole time. So they're completely freaking out walking into the building. Two, you have people who have, they've been safe, they've been out, they've been around people, but it's still scary. It's different saying I was around 10 people versus I'm about to walk into a building with 300 plus kids, 70 plus adults. They tell us to social distance, but it's not really possible, but we're in it. Then you have what I call selectively COVID averse. It depends on the situation if they're scared of COVID. They're not scared around COVID, around their coworker friends, but around a kid, they're like, whoa, wait, no, watch out. Right, so you have all those people walking into a building. So as I'm looking at the adults, who am I actually speaking to? I have to process that so I know how to direct the conversation. So keeping that in mind as an administrator walking into the school year, I am big on culture. You can do all the awesome things in the world. If your culture is not intentional and established, it's going to go out the door. So I opened up with cultivating culture. And to Dr. Gooding's point, there were kids at home in the bed, and now we're asking them to come and sit up in school. And let's acknowledge it's going to be an adjustment period. It's going to be an adjustment for some adults too, because some of us were in our PJs and as well. And, we were doing all the things as well. So acknowledging all that, and how are we intentionally establishing our culture as the kids come back. Adults are a model. I tell all my teachers that they're going to be following what you're doing. So you're the first example. And working with kids, what I've tried to do is, COVID is something that's happening, but it's not a badge of shame. And when I say a badge of shame, it's not, oh, they have COVID. Oh no, they got COVID. Now, what are they doing? Are they doing the right things now that they have COVID? Are they quarantining? Are they wearing their mask? Are they washing their hands? Are they taking their vitamins? Are they doing the things to stay healthy? Having those conversations and making the safety things fun for the kids. You know, I do mask check, nose check, like it's a great thing to wear a mask as opposed to put your mask on. How am I making it positive? How am I doing things like I'm big on doing this when I see kids, or winking? I have a whole like bunch of kids that wink and are doing this like obsessively because I've made it a thing. So trying to tell my teachers, like, they will do if you're intentional and kind of make it a thing, make it cool to be safe. Let's incentivize. You know, we have testing in our school, but you have to opt in. So let's give an incentive to the class that gets everybody tested. Because if we get tested, we know, and that's how we can stay safe. And making it, trying to turn the language of the narrative away from the badge of shame to, we're in this. How can we make the best of it? How is wearing our mask cool? How is washing our hands and not panicking? I think Miss Maxwell said, you know, the kids want to hug. I've seen teachers kind of stiff arm a kid when they run to hug them, but that's because that adult's panicked. So I have kids that come to hug me, and I'm like, you know, all my kids are like 3 to 4 feet tall. If they have COVID, it's on my shirt now. Okay. And I'm going to survive. And I'll hug them and I'll be like, okay, so we just freaked everybody out because we hugged. So let's talk about better ways that we can greet each other, and it can be special to us, and let's clean our hands in front of everybody. So trying to make it safe for them to sometimes make mistakes, because again, they're little humans. Adult humans aren't doing what they're supposed to. So why can't I hold a child 100% to the carpet of what they're supposed to if I have to remind grownups how to do it? So exercising that patience with them, having the conversations with them, smiling when I talk to them about it, making it like, oh my God, I'm so happy you wore your mask. Or if they didn't wear their mask to school, do you have a mask, baby? Let me get you one. We got plenty of masks. We have masks for days. There's no problem, just like we do school supplies and all those other things we have to apply. Supplies for kids, you know, let's make the safety things. Let's make the hand washing. Let's make the, if somebody sneezes, again, don't panic, because we still get colds, respiratory infections, you know, allergies, which is what I have right now. Those things are still happening, but guess what? They have their mask on. So even if they sneeze, we're all good. But the important thing is that we're wearing a mask. So being so very intentional, and I hold the adults in my building very accountable. So as I was smiling, as I talked about, you know, the kids, I'm super serious with the adults in my building that we're the first examples, and we have a choice in being as safe as we possibly can. And these are the things that we're not going to negotiate in our building. During the time that we're in this building, I know people have their personal beliefs outside the building, but in this building, these are going to be common norms that we agree to. And I'm super intentional about that. I think that I've also built a level of trust with my staff, so they know that when I'm talking to them, I mean it from my heart, and I'm doing what I can to keep everybody in this building as safe as we can possibly do it. But we got to do it together, and it's on the adults modeling, and it's in the adults setting an example so that the little humans know, hey, we are safe with these people during this time here. I know that Miss St. Joy, all the teachers in here are going to protect me and keep me as safe as possible. So I think that's our role in working with the children in our building, and taking that badge of shame off of it. It's something that's happening. It's not a shameful thing.
Thank you for that. This next question I'm thinking is for Mr. Alford, you know, with your younger children. Ms. Gooding talked about, you know, the students doing the walkout that were the older kids, and how they flex their muscle, and shown maybe some changes in behavior, that might not be something they would have done pre-COVID. Have you seen any changes with your kids? And if you have, how have you dealt with it? That might be great for anyone who's listening.
I have an interesting situation because with my, not my youngest son, but my younger two children, my son and my daughter, I have shared custody. And so that creates a completely different dynamic if you don't share the same, values, across both homes. And so, my kids, when they were at their mother's house, they would do more things that were probably safe, based on her assessment. And I mean, like educational things. And when they would be, at our house here, I could tell that they were a little reserved and very intentional about how they may introduce certain topics and guarded about what they talked about. And so my daughter, Nadia, does gymnastics. And so that was one of the first things that, everything went, but I said, hey, I know you really like this, but we're just going to, put it on pause for a moment, until, we make sure that, you're going to be safe. We also have a household where we have a child with type 1 diabetes, hydrocephalus. And so, it's like, look, the stakes are too high. And so, no, I didn't really get aggressive rebellion, but I could just tell how she moved and what she would talk to me about, and how normally she was just completely free. She understood that there were rules in our house and there were rules in her other house, and she governed herself accordingly. But she caught herself every now and then before she mentioned something to me, and I would have to pull it out of her. I didn't want her to, just totally go silent. I would just say, hey, let's talk about this. I want you to have fun. I want you to do the things that you did before, but, dad is not trying to be a party pooper. Here's why. And, I had to explain it in a way that wasn't too, sobering, for a child, but at the same time, I had to make sure she understood, how serious this, the situation is.
Right.
And that's what I guess, when I think about teachers and school leaders, and like I said, I work with superintendents and principals, and, as a consultant, you get the real story. Nobody can pull my information from an open records. And so I hear, how they feel, about what's happening in the schools and so forth. And they're doing the best they can. And I just got to give it to them. And you think that the only people who are not eligible for a vaccine right now are the people that they're accountable to. And then you factor in, parents who are like, no, my kids aren't wearing a mask, and you're going to teach them and you're going to lead them. It's, that's what I meant by a mess. Not that our schools aren't doing, a great job. I mean, like, it's just like, let me just pull my kids out of here. We'll be back, because we don't want to deal with this.
Right. No, that's a real thing. That is definitely a real thing. I do want to take a moment to just say, if there's anyone that has a question for anyone on the panel, to please go ahead and submit that via the chat. We're winding down. I know we're trying to stick to our time frame, but we do want to hear from you if you're listening. I have a question for Ms. Maxwell. Do you know what resources your school is utilizing to address student wellness or illness?
I know right now we have our school psychologist and we have a school social worker, school psychiatrist. So they have, especially within Title I, I feel like they've kind of, sadly, employment rates for staff, because of a lot of the things that have been forced, like forcing, teachers back in the classroom, where like, Miss St. Joy said, a lot of them, some people have completely isolated themselves and they're not comfortable. So there's a lot of gaps. There are a lot of positions that need to be filled. Like we have 2 nurses and they can only serve us 3 days out of the week at my school. So if a kid is sick any other day, then we have to do all these different things. We had to be trained on how to use an EpiPen. We always had to have the training, but we were never actually supposed to be able to use them. Now it's like, hey, these kids can go into shock for this, or this can happen. We need everybody to know how to and be willing to do this. So I think that a lot of the safety measures are being generalized among all staff, opposed to it just being specific people because of the lack of bodies that they have to fill certain positions. But they have also gotten very serious about trying to make sure that there are, staff that can address the mental health aspect of what's going on. Because, excuse me, I'm like Ms. Gooding said, a lot of the students, this is their fight. So what I'm noticing this year, like you said, that crop top thing is serious. The mini skirts are serious. These sagging pants, like, they're trying to express themselves. And it's become this huge thing that we're like, it's not that serious. Just put on a regular shirt. But for them, it's like, this is serious. This is what I want. And I had students say, it's my body, it's my choice. Why do I have to, how can you tell me what to wear? So it's like, the schools are trying their best to handle the mental aspect of it. And they are also trying with the PPE to handle the sanitation part of it. However, you still have parents who are sending their kids to school with a certain attitude because they don't think it's that serious, or they don't feel like they should have to follow in certain instructions. And you have some that are very afraid, so they're pulling their kids out. I mean, last week I had 3 kids pull out and change to our virtual academy because their parents and themselves, they didn't feel comfortable being in a full classroom. So it's the schools, I believe, are doing their best with what they have. But I also think that it makes it harder as a parent because, of course, we have our beliefs and we want our kids to have the best education, but we also we have to understand that there are so many other bodies in the building that need to be protected. And, we can't necessarily push just our views when you think about, the whole person and everybody that's being impacted. Like for me, I've been lucky enough to where, I work with 8th graders. So they are very concerned about me being pregnant. So they intentionally are watching out for me and trying to help me be cautious. But at the same time, at the school I came from, I had parents saying, so what that you're pregnant? You should be in here. So what? There's COVID. So what are, we had a lot of cases. So what? You'll be fine. You don't,
and I think,
my kid deserves to be here and you should, be here teaching them. And that's that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to look at, the full gamut of all of that as well too, right? And to really understand the varying views, the reality of the variant, and even just acknowledging, that we all have our different experiences behind it. Looking at the dichotomy of students, again, who have to be in 2 different households and those belief systems, and recognizing the anxiety, even being able to balance that for a child, to think, okay, I have to do this here, I have to do this here. And they're still learning how to be compassionate and to be empathetic and to be understanding. And of course, if it's their siblings, they're like, whatever. But, at the same time, you want them to be accommodating, not only to themselves, but to those around them. And that is quite a challenge. What we have found is that, one, bullies have absolutely no age, right? They're everywhere. And I think, it is evident what our children is witnessing, because it's not just the pandemic. It's not just the fights and the rallies with vaccines and masks. You also have discrimination. You have the political views. You have what's happening in Afghanistan, and our kids have access to everything that is happening right now, and understanding their own mental health. One of the things I will say about, this generation, one, they are very vocal, right? They are very open about their mental health. They are very open about their views, their rights. One, because again, they do have that immediate access to see, I know how to fight for myself. I know how to advocate for myself. And there is this balance of giving them the space and the freedom to be their authentic self and still stay safe, still maintain their independence, and also understand there's respect and boundaries as a child versus an adult, and what you do have access to. And it's been a lot. So it's really important to really think about how do we manage all of that? You know, how do we manage our own worry, our own challenges? And very important, even as parents, if you haven't noticed, parents are the biggest stressors for students, right? For kids, because we're always panicking. We're thinking about 50 different things that are going wrong. And they're just like, I'm just trying to go to the mall. Like, what are you doing right now? Right? I have a new driver. Like, I'm freaking out every day. He gets in the car and I'm like, I'm not ready for this. But yet I'm also increasing anxiety for him every time I'm freaking out. So it's really recognizing that we have to monitor our own feelings, right? As adults. Ms. Joy said it best, you know, being accountable as adults. And the same way that she is running her school, guys, I encourage you to run your households the same way, right? You're talking to those adults in the household. I need you to be accountable. I need you to stay safe. And as far as this house, right, this is how we're going to do things. Kids need structure. Even though they fight it, when they don't have structure, they feel like a loss of control. So it is important that whatever you're feeling, keep it in check as much as possible. You know, just like Ms. St. Joy talked about, you know, finding your space to be transparent, and please talk to a therapist, right? A therapist does not mean you're crazy. A therapist is someone who can help you vent, right? It is a paid friend, someone who's going to give you the objectivity to talk about how you're feeling and what you're expressing. And at the same time, allowing you to think of better solutions and giving you different ways to think about things. So talking with a therapist, telehealth is still available for those out there where you can connect online. You don't have to go face to face. There are free resources out there that I truly encourage you all to learn about. You have the crisis text line, especially for our students, because they are more adept of looking at what's happening. We just had another child actor to die by suicide. And we're constantly hearing that. They're constantly being exposed to it. These influencers on the YouTube, they're dying by suicide, you know, because they're losing out on so much of that. So we do have to be mindful, you know, for ourselves and really understanding how our emotions are so that we can support our students, our children a lot more, to give them that space to be open, to be patient, right? To really talk with them and give them that space to have a voice. And I say, I respectively hear your concerns. However, I still will make the decision of what I think is going to be best. When you are in the position that you can think around all of the different scenarios, then I will give you that freedom to make the decision. But I am open to hear what you're saying, right? It's giving them that opportunity to say, to be heard, because we all want to be heard. And to also be mindful of the words they're saying or not saying. I know it's easy for our kids to kind of get stuck in their rooms, right? You know, because they're kind of trying to be their authentic self, but, you know, force that engagement, force those interactions, play a board game sometimes, you know, get inside your kids' heads, because that's one of the scariest things of the worry, the managing that anxiety. It's helping them to sort out their own thoughts, their own feelings, right? So I want to just leave you all with each of your individual charges of what you think is better for our parents, our administrators, just in our community, what we can do independently to continue to support ourselves and to stay healthy.
Yeah, I love that. One theme that's just come throughout for me is really empathy, you know, looking at it from everyone's lens, the administrator, the parent that's sharing a household, the parent that's a teacher and expecting, you know, the mental health provider and parent, you know, of special needs children. It's just important that we try to put ourselves in everyone's space as much as possible, because it's really easy to just think about yourself and how you're feeling and what you're afraid of. So I think empathy is important. I think therapy, you guys have been very transparent about therapy and talking it out either with friends, or some of us are very fortunate to know therapists or counselors, but just not holding this in, right? Because this is a once in a 100-year occurrence. No one has the answer to this. The people who did, they're pretty much gone. We're dealing with this with a whole different set of circumstances too, right? So I think you guys have been, like I said, so transparent, and I hope that people that were watching got a lot out of it, because the biggest piece that I see is you're thinking through things. You're not reacting as much as you are pausing, thinking it through, and making the best decision that you can at that moment, right? You get more science, you get more information, that decision may change. But I applaud each and every one of you. And I too am in the struggle with you. I just dropped off a college student, my third and final child at college. You know, and it's interesting. And I was a school counselor, master's in human development. I did that for 13 years, and it was still a struggle to get her to talk to me about how she's feeling or how, and I watched the kids walk around with no mask. You know, I'm like, well, what's going on here? You know, so, you know, we're all struggling in our own way. And just keep that in mind when you run into someone else. They're not mad at you. They may just be struggling with something right then and there, and show them a little empathy.
Ms. Joy, your final words?
There's an opportunity in all of this. I charge my teachers, my administrators, when working with kids, be an instrument of inspiration. How can I inspire you to keep everybody safe? How can I inspire you in your learning? To Dr. Jones' point, this is a once in a lifetime occurrence. How would you do this if this would happen in your lives when you're an adult? How are you going to protect the future little humans? There's an opportunity to inspire, to make things better. You know, for my administrators, we can't control anything happening outside of the building. What can I do to make this the safest learning environment for my students? Because we want them, like, I think we're all in agreement, no matter where you are in the spectrum, we want them in school. I want them in school all year. They need to be in school for so many reasons. So how can I inspire you to do what we have to do to stay safe here, do what we have to do to make the best of our learning opportunities? I think that is my final thought and charge. Just everything we're doing, how are we inspiring? And are we doing things that is in the best interest of our children's just total development?
Absolutely. Tieyenna?
I agree. I think that we definitely have to be just open to, as I said, the mental health aspect of students understanding, again, especially as minorities, that we also deal with mental health just as much as everyone else, even if it's not as well accepted and, you know, appreciated or spoken about. So understanding that psychologically, children are not adults. They don't think like adults. They don't process information like adults. And because of everything that has also happened, like you all said, politically, you know, racially, all these things are happening while there's also this pandemic, and there's a war, you know, war being ended, and all these things that they see, they hear about, they think about, they talk about, all these suicides. You know, there's so much exposure to things, but also isolation from other things. So being open to conversations, no matter what kind of household you came from, you know, trying to change the narrative and be more receptive to hearing, trying to get them to speak, and just being, you know, like I try to always be an ear to my students, and that's how I build those relationships. So I tell them, you know, I don't care what it is that you need to say it to me. Let's talk about it. And then, you know, if I feel concerned and I need to bring somebody else in, I will. But if you want to come talk to me, I'm open to talk to you. So I think as a parent, you know, being willing to have those conversations and understand the impact that the exposure and the isolation is having on these students and these children and even ourselves is great. And then going back to self-love, you know, take a bubble bath, light some candles, go get a massage, do something to make yourself at peace. and make sure that you're mentally healthy to actually deal with those conversations and the stressors. And then also trying to figure out what can help that child. What do they like? For my son, he likes to be out, he loves people. So even if I put him in an online class where he can pretend to be Spider-Man and do a Spider-Man workout with other kids, he's excited. So trying to figure out things that individually will help make that individual child feel good, but putting yourself before that so that you're well equipped to deal with that.
And that's about Niece.
My charge is to be hypersensitive with our children, listen. I did that, but it took me a while, to really listen deeply. Initially I was like, look, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing what we're doing. And I'd also say, educate yourself about what's happening. To Jewell's point, the CDC will say something one day and it changes, and it's not because they want to play games, it's because the information is changing that rapidly. And so in order to be able to provide the security, that our children want, and even to ourselves, we have to educate ourselves so that we know, what's actually happening, and we can operate from a place of strength.
It's all educated guesses, right? That we're coming along. Life did not come with instructions. Parenting didn't come with instructions. We're working along together. And I think when we open up our hearts and show a little empathy and show compassion, we are modeling for our little humans in our lives and helping them to understand and to process everything that is happening. But I do encourage all of you and to recognize the importance of caring for yourself and reminding you to put that oxygen mask on yourself first before helping others, because you're going to run out of oxygen before you can get to them. So taking time, really caring for yourself, and understand, bowl baths are great, but sometimes it takes more, right? Like, we are dealing with a lot as everything that we have to do and the many hats that we have to wear. So do not hold on to that shame, silence that shame, take the time, reach out for support, connect with others. If you're not comfortable connecting with a therapist just yet, just talk with a volunteer, talk with someone who can really listen to you, because your voice as adults is just as important to be heard. And sometimes even my strong ones, we keep going and we keep going. We can't keep going, guys. Our brains don't work like that. Our bodies, they got to shut down. They got to refuel. Our cell phones shut down, so can we. So before, our lives take us out, let's make sure we're taking time for ourselves and taking our time for our families, and remembering sometimes it's okay that the dishes are dirty and the homework didn't get done. Like, sometimes just sit there and just hug on each other. Whatever you can do to connect with others is just so important right now. So one, understand you are not in this alone. We are all dealing with all different types of scenarios and experiences. And I just encourage you all to connect with those who can support you during this time. And also just educate yourself. Just like Stephen said, it does change constantly, right? That's one thing we do know. That's the only thing that's constant is change. So being open and flexible to that. And I know those things takes time to learn, but I encourage you to work on that as well too. And I do want to again thank Ms. Shanti Das, our founder here at Silence to Shame. And I know we went over our time just a little bit, but you just got to keep going when the conversation is good. And I do want to make sure that we all remember that we can connect and be supportive and empathetic and still always be selfish too, right? To have our own moments to ourselves and make sure that we can regroup and recharge like we need to. So remember to take time, save a life, and silence the shame. Thank you all for tuning in. And just to let you know, yes, this is being recorded, so you can definitely tune in a little bit later. And you can also see it on our Facebook as well. So thank you all for tuning in. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And I want to thank all of our panelists and our wonderful moderator for holding us down and keeping us through it. So I appreciate your times. And I know now we got to go make dinners and we got to get lives and everything else together and bedtime routines in place. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's end this out on a positive note. So please stay encouraged. And remember, we are here when you need to. So thank you for tuning in, guys.